April 1945. Germany. A Wehrmacht colonel stood in a town square. The war was over. He knew it. Everyone knew it. And yet, he reached for his holster. In one smooth motion, he drew his Luger pistol and pointed it directly at the chest of General George S. Patton, 4 feet away. Point-blank range. 20 American rifles snapped up instantly. Every soldier in that square was ready to fire. And Patton didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't step back. He just looked at the gun and smiled. What happened next? History books have never fully told you. In the next 19 minutes, you'll find out exactly what Patton said to that colonel, standing 2 feet from a loaded gun, that made a desperate man lower his weapon and weep. Why military historians say Patton's decision that day was more dangerous than any battlefield he ever crossed. And the one thing Patton did at the end of that confrontation that broke every military regulation in the book, and why his own aide was too stunned to write it down.
All units, move out immediately.
To understand what happened in that square, you need to know where Germany was. April 1945. Berlin was 200 miles away. Hitler was in a bunker. The Wehrmacht, once the most feared military machine in the world, was collapsing. But it wasn't dead yet. Scattered across Germany, thousands of German soldiers were still armed, still dangerous, still proud men in a country that no longer existed. One of those men was Oberst Heinrich Müller, colonel, 52 years old, 30 years in uniform. He'd fought in Poland, in France, 3 brutal years on the Eastern Front. He'd been at Stalingrad, where an entire German army froze to death in the snow. He'd retreated across Poland, watched German cities burn from Allied bombing. By April 1945, his garrison was surrounded. Cut off, radio silent. His men, once thousands, were now 30 survivors out of a unit that had bled across half of Europe. And Patton's Third Army was cutting through Germany like a knife. Moving so fast his own supply lines couldn't keep up. Town after town, surrender after surrender. This was supposed to be just another one, a formality. Müller would lay down his weapons. Patton would accept the terms. Standard procedure. That's not what happened. But here's what the history books never tell you. Müller didn't pull that gun out of rage. He pulled it out of something far more dangerous. Grief. And when Patton looked down that barrel, 4 feet away, he understood something in that moment that no military manual ever taught him. He didn't call for backup. He didn't give the order to fire. He took a step forward, closer to the gun. We'll get to what he said. But first, you need to know exactly what pushed Müller to that moment. March 1945. Müller's world had been ending for 2 years. He'd watched Stalingrad happen in real time. 300,000 German soldiers surrounded, starved, frozen. He was one of the few who made it out. He'd watched Poland fall, watched Germany itself start burning. By the time his garrison was surrounded in that small German town, he had received his last radio transmission from Berlin in 6 days. Silence. He was on his own. 2 options: fight to the last man, a battle he couldn't win, and watch his remaining 30 soldiers die for nothing. Or surrender. He chose surrender. But there was one thing he hadn't planned for. His pistol. That Luger had been on his hip for 30 years. He'd carried it through Poland, France, and 3 winters in Russia. It wasn't just a weapon. To Müller, it was proof that he existed. That his service meant something. That his entire life hadn't been a mistake. The surrender terms required him to hand it over. That was the moment something broke inside him. April 1945. The square was quiet. Patton's aide read the terms aloud. Unconditional surrender. All weapons to be turned over. All soldiers taken as prisoners of war. Standard terms. Repeated hundreds of times across Germany. Müller listened. His face showed nothing, but his hand moved to his holster. The sound of leather and metal was loud in the quiet square. Every American soldier reacted instantly. MPs reached for their pistols. Soldiers snapped their rifles up. Safeties clicked off. 20 weapons pointed at one German colonel. But Patton didn't react at all. He looked up from the documents, saw the Luger aimed at his chest, and his expression didn't change. He didn't reach for his own ivory-handled revolvers. He didn't shout. He didn't give the order to fire. He just stood there, 4 feet from a loaded pistol, and looked at Müller. The silence stretched. Every second felt like an hour. The gun was aimed directly at Patton's heart. One squeeze of the trigger, and the most famous American general in Europe would be dead. 20 American rifles, ready to fire. One word from Patton, Müller dies. But Patton didn't give that word. Instead, he did something no one in that square had ever seen a general do. He took a step forward, toward the gun. Now he was 3 feet away. Then he spoke. What he said in the next 60 seconds made a hardened combat veteran, a man who had survived Stalingrad, lower his weapon and weep. But first, there's something about Müller that Patton didn't know yet. Something that changed everything. Patton spoke first. His voice was calm, conversational, like he was asking about the weather. "Are you going to shoot me, Colonel?" Müller didn't answer. His jaw tightened. "Because if you are," Patton continued, "you'd better do it now. My men have about 5 seconds before they cut you in half." It was true. 20 rifles, ready, waiting. But Patton wasn't done. He took another step forward, 2 feet from the muzzle of the Luger now. "You're thinking about it," Patton said. "I can see it. You're wondering if killing me would be worth dying for. If taking out one American general would somehow change how this war ends." Müller's face showed nothing, but the gun didn't waver. "Let me save you the trouble," Patton said. "It wouldn't. The war is over. Germany has lost, and killing me won't change that. All it would do is get you shot, and make your men watch you die for nothing." His English was precise, learned before the war. "You ask if I will shoot you. Perhaps I should ask why I should not. You have destroyed my country, burned our cities, killed our civilians, and now you come to take even our honor." Patton didn't look away. "Fair question. Here's your answer. Because you're not a murderer. You're a soldier. There's a difference." "Is there? I have killed many men in this war. In combat, yes. But right now we're not in combat. This is a surrender ceremony. You pull that trigger, you're not a soldier anymore. You're just a man who shot an unarmed officer during a truce. That's not warfare. That's murder." Müller's hand tightened on the pistol. "You speak of honor, and yet you ask me to surrender my sidearm, my rank, my identity." "I'm not asking you to give up your honor," Patton replied. "I'm asking you to accept reality. The war is over. You lost. That's not dishonorable. That's just how wars end. Someone wins, someone loses. You fought hard, you fought well, but fighting well doesn't change the outcome." A pause. Then Patton's voice had an edge. "You think I haven't lost? I've lost thousands of men, good soldiers who died following my orders, boys who should be home with their families right now. You think winning means you didn't lose something." He gestured at the ruins around them. "This war has cost everyone. The only question now is whether we're going to add more bodies to the count, or whether we're going to be smart enough to stop." Müller was silent for a long moment. Something in his expression had changed. Then he said something that stopped everyone in that square. "I have no family. A beat. They died in the bombing of Dresden." The square was completely silent. Even the American soldiers had stopped moving. A German colonel, a loaded gun, and a confession that changed the entire weight of the moment. "Then don't die for nothing," Patton said quietly. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The gun was still aimed at Patton's chest. Müller's finger was still on the trigger. And then, slowly, his hand began to move. What Patton did in the next 60 seconds broke every military regulation in the book. His own aide refused to write it in the official report. "We'll get there in 2 minutes. But what happened to Müller's gun? You won't see this coming." The Luger came down, slowly, the muzzle dropping from Patton's heart, to his stomach, to his waist, until it was pointed at the ground. Müller's arm hung at his side. The fight had gone out of him. Not from fear, from understanding, from the weight of everything Patton had said. The war was over. This was over. Patton reached out gently and took the pistol from Müller's hand. The colonel didn't resist. His hand was shaking now. Not from fear, from something else. Exhaustion. Grief. The weight of watching an entire world collapse. Patton looked at the Luger. He turned it over in his hands. And then he did something that shocked everyone in that square. He handed it back. "Keep it," Patton said. Silence. "You're right. You've carried that weapon for 30 years. You've earned it. I'm not going to take a soldier's honor. Not like this." Müller stared at the gun in his hand, then at Patton. "I do not understand. I pointed this weapon at you, and you didn't shoot." "That's the difference between a soldier and a murderer," Patton said. "You had the chance. You chose not to take it. That takes more courage than pulling the trigger would have." He turned to his aide. "Make a note. Colonel Müller is to retain his sidearm. He's given his word that the fighting is over. That's good enough for me." The aide looked stunned. "Sir, regulations state that all enemy officers must surrender their weapons." "I don't care about regulations," Patton cut him off. "This man just had a gun pointed at me. Point blank. He could have squeezed that trigger. He didn't. That tells me everything I need to know. He's not a threat. He's a soldier who's watched his world end. Let him keep some dignity. Let him walk away from this with something." Tears were streaming down Müller's face. Not from fear, from something else. Recognition of what Patton had just given him. "I will never forget this," Müller said quietly. "Neither will I," Patton replied. "Now go. Surrender your men properly, and go home when this is over." The surrender continued, but the mood had changed entirely. The German soldiers had watched their colonel pull a gun on an American general, and they'd watched that general show mercy. Word spread through the Third Army within hours, through the German prisoners by nightfall. And here's what military historians say about that moment, and they're still debating it today. If Patton had given the order to shoot, Müller would have died, but so might others. In the confusion, American soldiers could have been caught in crossfire. German officers might have tried to defend their commander. The entire square could have erupted into violence. Dozens could have died. In the last days of a war that was already won. Instead, Patton had talked a desperate man down from the edge, not by threatening him, by understanding him. "That's not luck," one military historian wrote decades later. "That's genius of a different kind, the genius of knowing when not to fight." As for Müller, he kept his word. He surrendered his men properly. No resistance, no more drama. He went to a POW camp quietly, and when the war officially ended a few weeks later, he went home. To a Germany that no longer existed, the country he'd fought for, gone. He never spoke publicly about what happened in that square. But his family later said this: he kept that Luger for the rest of his life. Not as a weapon, as a reminder of the day an American general, surrounded by his own soldiers, with every right to give the order to fire, chose mercy instead. And Patton, 6 months after that surrender ceremony, the war ended. But George Patton never made it home. In December 1945, just months after Germany surrendered, he died in a car accident in Heidelberg, Germany. No final battle, no hero's death. Just a quiet accident on a German road. He was 60 years old. At his funeral, soldiers stood in the freezing cold. Nobody had ordered them to be there. They came on their own. One veteran who had been in that square that April day said simply, "Other generals won battles. Patton understood men." That moment, in a ruined German town, 4 feet from a loaded Luger, was perhaps the truest thing about who Patton really was. Not just the general who moved armies, but the man who knew when to put the gun down. Now, was Patton right? Was handing that pistol back a moment of genius, or a dangerous breach of military protocol that could have gotten men killed? Let me know in the comments. And here's a question worth thinking about. Who showed more courage in that square? Patton, for walking toward the gun, or Müller, for choosing not to fire? Drop your answer below. This comment section is going to be interesting. If you want to know about the moment Patton's decisions finally caught up with him, the incident that nearly got him court-martialed, stripped of his command, and sent home in disgrace, that story is right here. And if this is your first time here, Untold War Truths covers the stories that history books skip over. Real people, real decisions, real consequences. Hit subscribe. New video every week. I'll see you in the next one.